Before dawn on 19th of February 1945, Iwo Jima waits in silence. It is a small island, barely 8 square miles of volcanic rock, sitting alone in the Pacific. No cities, no industry, no population to liberate. From a distance, it looks like a barren scar on the ocean's surface, hardly worth the effort now being directed toward it. Yet for Japanese command, this island has become unavoidable. Iwo Jima lies directly between the Mariana Islands and Japan itself. Every American bomber passing overhead reminds Japanese planners what is coming next. Every airfield carved into its ash-black soil threatens to shorten the distance between war and homeland. The island cannot stop the United States, but it can make the approach to Japan far more dangerous. That is why it must be held. Not to win, not to survive, but to extract a price. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi understands this before the invasion begins. He does not expect reinforcement. He does not believe evacuation is possible. The Imperial Japanese Navy cannot protect the island, and the skies belong to the Americans. What remains is choice, how the island will be defended, and what that defense will demand from the enemy. Kuribayashi rejects the old patterns. There will be no massed charges into machine gun fire, no desperate defense of the beaches. Instead, the island itself will become a weapon. Positions carved deep into volcanic rock, tunnels stretching beneath ridges and airfields, guns hidden where bombardment cannot easily reach them. The Americans will land unopposed, and only then will the island begin to fight. Offshore, the invasion fleet assembles in overwhelming strength. Battleships, carriers, transports, thousands of Marines preparing to go ashore. Many believe the island will be difficult, but brief. Days of bombardment have turned its surface into dust and smoke. There is little visible movement, little return fire. The silence is not reassurance, it is preparation. Because on Iwo Jima, Japanese command does not measure success by ground held or battles won. It measures success by time gained and casualties inflicted. Every hour the invasion is delayed matters. Every American life lost reshapes the future battles yet to come. As the first landing craft surged toward the black sand beaches, the smallest island of the Pacific War prepares to deliver one of its most enduring lessons. Iwo Jima's importance does not come from what it contains. It comes from where it sits. In early 1945, the Pacific War has already crossed a critical threshold. American forces have broken through Japan's outer defensive perimeter. The Marshall Islands are gone. The Marianas have fallen. Saipan, Tinian, and Guam now serve as forward bases from which B-29 superfortresses strike the Japanese home islands almost daily. Those bombers can reach Japan without Iwo Jima, but they cannot reach it safely. The distance from the Marianas to Tokyo is long and unforgiving. Bombers fly for hours over open ocean with no friendly land beneath them. Mechanical failure, battle damage, or fuel miscalculation often means death. Fighters launched from the Marianas cannot escort the bombers all the way to Japan and back. For Japanese defenders, this gap matters. Interceptors can attack unescorted bombers. Radar warnings provide time to prepare defenses. Every lost aircraft weakens the American air campaign. Iwo Jima sits directly in that gap. From its airfields, Japanese radar installations and fighter units contribute to early warning and interception efforts. The island is not Japan's entire warning system, but it is a valuable node within it. More importantly for American planners, Iwo Jima offers a solution to a growing problem. Captured intact, its airfields can host fighter escorts and serve as emergency landing grounds for damaged bombers returning from Japan. This shifts the calculus of the air war. The United States does not need Iwo Jima to begin bombing Japan. It needs Iwo Jima to sustain bombing Japan at scale. The island promises fewer bomber losses, higher crew survival, and continuous pressure on Japanese industry and morale. In a war increasingly decided by production and endurance, those margins matter. There is also timing. By late 1944, American planners are already thinking beyond bombing. They are considering the final phase of the war. Every base captured now is evaluated not only for its immediate value, but for how it supports future operations. Iwo Jima's location makes it an ideal staging point for air-sea coordination as the war closes in on Japan itself. For Japan, this logic is clear as well. Japanese command understands that losing Iwo Jima will not end the war, but it will tighten the noose. It will shorten flight times, increase sortie rates, improve fighter coverage, and perhaps most importantly, it will signal that no piece of territory, no matter how small, is beyond American reach. That psychological weight matters. Iwo Jima is not a distant outpost like the Marshalls. It is part of Japan's inner defensive zone. Losing it carries symbolic meaning alongside military consequence. It confirms that the war has moved decisively toward the homeland and will not stop at its outer approaches. This is why the island cannot be treated casually. American planners debate the cost. The island is small, heavily fortified, and devoid of civilians. Some question whether it is worth the lives it will demand. Others argue that leaving it in Japanese hands would mean paying that cost repeatedly in the air, bomber by bomber, crew by crew. In the end, the decision is made. Operation Detachment is approved because the war's momentum demands it. Air power must be sustained. Losses must be reduced. And Japan's inner defenses must continue to contract, island by island. What American planners see as a logistical necessity, Japanese planners see as inevitability. They know the island will be attacked. They know it will fall. What remains is deciding how that fall will shape everything that comes after. And that decision has already been made beneath Iwo Jima's volcanic ground. By the time Operation Detachment is approved, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi has already abandoned any illusion of conventional defense. Kuribayashi is not a battlefield romantic. He has lived in the United States. He understands American industry, American firepower, and American doctrine. He knows exactly how earlier island defenses failed. Beaches turned into killing zones. Troops exposed to naval gunfire. Massed counterattacks erased in minutes. He studies these defeats carefully and concludes that repeating them would only shorten the battle, not change its outcome. His objective is not to stop the invasion, it is to redefine it. Kuribayashi orders that the beaches of Iwo Jima will not be defended in force. Guns will not reveal themselves prematurely. Troops will not be sacrificed for symbolic ground. Instead, the island will absorb the landing and only then begin to bleed the attacker. This decision runs against entrenched expectations within the Japanese military, but Kuribayashi enforces it without compromise. Defense will be underground. More than 18 kilometers of tunnels are carved into Iwo Jima's volcanic rock. These tunnels are not crude shelters. They are a connected system linking command posts, artillery positions, ammunition stores, and troop quarters. They allow defenders to move unseen, to survive bombardment, and to reappear where they are least expected. Positions destroyed from the air can be reoccupied from below. The terrain becomes part of the weapon. Gun emplacements are placed on reverse slopes, firing laterally rather than forward. Entrances are camouflaged. Ventilation shafts are hidden. Observation posts relay targeting information through protected channels. Even Mount Suribachi, dominating the island's southern end, is hollowed out with interconnected positions that allow defenders to shift and survive under constant fire. Kuribayashi also enforces discipline. There will be no wasteful banzai-style charges aimed at symbolic honor. Counterattacks will be limited, timed, and purposeful. Every soldier is instructed that survival is necessary to continue inflicting casualties. Death is expected, but it must be meaningful. Each defender is expected to kill as many Americans as possible before being eliminated. This doctrine transforms the battle before it begins. Instead of confronting overwhelming firepower head-on, Japanese forces will force American units to advance into prepared killing zones without visible targets. Every yard taken will require clearing tunnels, caves, and fortified positions one by one. Progress will be slow not because the enemy pushes back, but because he refuses to disappear. Kuribayashi's orders extend to morale and communication. There will be no expectation of relief, no reinforcement, no evacuation. Each soldier understands that Iwo Jima is a one-way assignment. This knowledge removes false hope and replaces it with grim clarity. The goal is not survival. The goal is contribution. Supplies are rationed accordingly. Ammunition is prioritized over food. Medical care is minimal. The defense is designed to function while collapsing, not to be sustained indefinitely. Every calculation assumes eventual destruction, but seeks to delay that moment as long as possible. For American intelligence, much of this preparation remains invisible. Reconnaissance identifies fortifications, but not their depth. Bombardment plans assume destruction that will not occur. The underground system, its scale and resilience, will only reveal itself once the battle is already underway. When American forces land on Iwo Jima, they will not be facing an army trying to defend an island. They will be facing an army trying to turn time itself into a weapon. And that choice, made long before the first shell lands, will define everything that follows. The first Marines to hit Iwo Jima do not realize how completely the battle has already been shaped against them. At 0900 hours on 19th of February 1945, assault waves move ashore onto beaches that appear shattered but strangely uncontested. The bombardment preceding the landing has been among the longest of the Pacific War. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and aircraft have pounded the island for days. Many Marines expect heavy resistance at the waterline, yet what they encounter instead is emptiness. They advance anyway. The black volcanic sand immediately becomes the first enemy. It gives underfoot, swallowing boots, bogging down vehicles, and robbing men of momentum. There is no firm ground, no natural cover. Every movement forward is slow and exposed. Weapons sink, radios fail, tanks struggle to move. The beach offers nowhere to hide and nowhere to rest. Still, there is little incoming fire. This absence creates confusion rather than relief. Veterans sense the danger. An undefended beach makes no sense. The silence feels intentional, as if the island itself is holding its breath. Officers push units inland quickly, aware that remaining on the beach too long would invite catastrophe once the enemy reveals himself. That revelation comes suddenly. As Marines push beyond the beach exits and begin moving toward higher ground, machine guns open fire from unseen positions. Mortars fall with precision. Artillery bursts from angles that defy expectation. The enemy is not in front of them. He is inside the island. Fire comes from slopes that appear empty, from holes that vanish when struck, from positions that survive bombardment and resume firing moments later. Momentum collapses. Units are pinned down without clear targets. Return fire achieves little. Naval guns and airstrikes are called in again and again, yet when the smoke clears, resistance remains. Positions thought destroyed reopen. The ground itself seems hostile, alive with gunfire. Psychological strain sets in almost immediately. Marines are trained to fight an enemy they can see, suppress, and maneuver against. On Iwo Jima, the enemy is largely invisible. Casualties occur without warning. Leaders are killed trying to locate firing points. Medics crawl forward under fire to reach the wounded, often without knowing where the threat lies. Progress is measured in yards. Every advance requires clearing bunkers and caves individually. Flamethrowers, demolition charges, and small unit assaults become essential tools. Even then, success is temporary. A cave sealed at one entrance may still connect to others. Japanese defenders emerge behind advancing units, firing into their rear before disappearing again. Fatigue compounds the danger. The fighting does not occur in dramatic surges, but in constant pressure. There is no clear lull, no safe moment. Marines dig shallow foxholes in sand that collapses around them. Sleep is brief and fragmented. The sound of gunfire never fully recedes. For many, the shock is not the violence itself, but its persistence. Iwo Jima does not allow for adaptation through rhythm. Every pattern learned is quickly undermined. The island refuses predictability. Each ridge cleared reveals another defensive line behind it. Each apparent success leads only to the next obstacle. Leadership at every level feels the strain. Officers struggle to coordinate movement across terrain that offers no landmarks and no cover. Communication lines are severed repeatedly. Units become isolated. Decisions are made with incomplete information, under fire, with lives hanging on timing and instinct. Yet the advance continues. Not because conditions improve, but because there is no alternative. Withdrawal offers no safety. The beach remains exposed. The only path forward is through the island's defenses, one position at a time. Within the first days, it becomes clear that this battle will not be decided by speed or maneuver. It will be decided by endurance. The American assault on Iwo Jima is no longer an operation designed to seize an objective quickly. It is a test of how long men can function under sustained pressure against an enemy who has no intention of retreating. And as this reality settles in, the battle begins to reveal its deeper character, not just as a fight for ground, but as a confrontation between two doctrines of war, both prepared to pay a terrible price. What confronts the Americans on Iwo Jima is not only a tactical problem, but a deliberate system designed to consume time, energy, and certainty. From the Japanese perspective, the defense is functioning exactly as intended. Kuribayashi's soldiers rarely reveal themselves unless the conditions favor them. They wait for American units to bunch up, to pause, to expose themselves while clearing one position, then strike from another. Fire is controlled and purposeful. Ammunition is conserved. Targets are chosen carefully. Survival is not an instinct here. It is a requirement. The tunnel system makes this possible. Japanese defenders move beneath the battlefield while the Americans fight on its surface. A position neutralized from one angle can be reoccupied from another. Units thought destroyed reappear days later. The underground network allows coordination even as the surface is pulverized. Command posts survive bombardment. Orders continue to flow. This is not chaotic resistance. It is organized attrition. Every American assault forces a choice. Bypass a position and risk fire from the rear, or clear it and lose time and men. There is no clean solution. Each option carries cost. Kuribayashi's doctrine ensures that American units must fight the island in detail, never allowing momentum to accumulate. Technology becomes both advantage and burden. Flamethrowers, demolition charges, and armored bulldozers are brought forward to deal with fortified caves. These tools are effective, but they require proximity. Marines must approach entrances under fire, often within yards of the enemy. Clearing a position becomes an intimate act, measured in seconds and meters, with consequences that are immediate and personal. The moral weight of this fighting is heavy. Caves are not uniform. Some contain soldiers. Others shelter wounded men. Some hold supplies. Some hold nothing at all. Decisions must be made quickly, often with incomplete information. Hesitation can be fatal. Aggression can destroy lives at close range. The line between necessity and brutality blurs under pressure. For Japanese soldiers, the experience is equally grim. There is no expectation of survival. Food and water grow scarce. Medical care is minimal. Wounded men often remain in place, continuing to fight or waiting to die. The tunnel system that provides protection also becomes a trap as entrances collapse and air runs out. Darkness, heat, and confinement become constant companions. Communication degrades over time. As American forces advance, sections of the tunnel network are destroyed or sealed. Units become isolated. Orders are delayed or lost. Resistance continues, but coordination weakens. Even so, individual positions fight on, following Kuribayashi's instructions to resist as long as possible, without regard for personal survival. The contrast between doctrines is stark. American forces emphasize firepower, combined arms, and gradual advance. Japanese forces emphasize concealment, patience, and sacrifice. Neither side can disengage. Neither side can afford to relent. The battle becomes less about defeating an opponent and more about enduring conditions designed to break the will. Psychological strain deepens on both sides. For Americans, the invisibility of the enemy erodes confidence. Every step forward feels earned at disproportionate cost. For Japanese defenders, the knowledge that the island will fall eventually creates a different kind of pressure. Each moment of resistance becomes an obligation, not a choice. Time itself becomes contested ground. Days turn into weeks. The timetable imagined before the landing dissolves. Predictions are revised repeatedly. Each new ridgeline brings expectations of resolution that are not fulfilled. The island refuses to yield quickly, or cleanly, or decisively. Yet the imbalance remains. American resources continue to flow. Fresh units rotate forward. Artillery and naval gunfire never cease. Air support remains constant. Japanese defenders, by contrast, diminish steadily. Ammunition runs low. Food disappears. Medical supplies vanish entirely. The system that once maximized resistance begins to strain under its own success. By mid-March, it is clear that the Japanese defense cannot hold indefinitely. But it has already achieved its purpose. It has turned a small island into a prolonged ordeal. It has imposed casualties far beyond what its size would suggest. And it has demonstrated, with brutal clarity, what happens when a determined defender abandons hope of victory and fights solely to impose cost. This realization begins to resonate beyond Iwo Jima itself. Because if this is what one small, isolated island demands, then the battles yet to come will demand far more. By the time the battle reaches its third week, Iwo Jima has stopped feeling like an island and begun to feel like a closed system. The southern end, dominated by Mount Suribachi, has already been isolated. Marines have fought their way around its base, cutting it off from the rest of the island. For days, the mountain has loomed over the beachhead, its slopes scarred by bombardment, its interior alive with hidden movement. Every advance elsewhere has taken place under its shadow. When the final push against Suribachi begins, it is not dramatic. It is methodical. Flamethrowers, demolition teams, and infantry move upward yard by yard. Each cave is treated as a separate engagement. Grenades are thrown, charges are placed, entrances are sealed. Resistance does not vanish all at once. It diminishes gradually, position by position, as the defenders inside are killed, suffocated, or cut off beyond recovery. On 23 February 1945, Marines reach the summit. The raising of the flag becomes iconic, but the moment itself is brief and local. It marks the capture of a terrain feature, not the end of the battle. Even as the flag goes up, fighting continues across the rest of the island with undiminished intensity. Suribachi is secure, but it is only the beginning of the hardest phase. North of Suribachi, the terrain grows more complex. Instead of a single dominant feature, Marines now face a succession of ridges, ravines, and plateaus, each fortified, each connected by tunnels. Hill numbers replace place names. Objectives are defined by elevation and grid reference rather than geography. Progress becomes abstract, recorded in after-action reports rather than visible change. The Japanese defense remains intact. Kuribayashi has preserved his forces for this phase of the battle. The northern plateau holds the densest concentration of fortifications on the island. Artillery is well sighted. Fields of fire overlap. Caves are deeper and more numerous. The island narrows here, forcing American units into confined approaches where maneuver is limited. Attacks become grinding affairs. Units advance under covering fire, take a position, consolidate, then repeat the process against the next. Casualties occur steadily. There are no spectacular breakthroughs, only accumulation. A bunker cleared in the morning may still be contested by evening. A ridge taken at great cost may reveal an even stronger position beyond it. Weather worsens the strain. Wind carries ash and dust into eyes and lungs. Nights are cold. Days are filled with noise and vibration. Sleep is brief and shallow. Men operate on exhaustion, sustained by routine and discipline rather than morale. The island offers no relief, only tasks to be completed. Japanese resistance adapts as ground is lost. Defenders withdraw into secondary positions rather than counterattacking blindly. Snipers target leaders and specialists. Artillery fires sparingly, conserving ammunition for moments when it can cause maximum disruption. The intent is no longer to hold territory, but to slow the American advance wherever possible. Communication on both sides grows difficult. Terrain interferes with radios. Lines are cut repeatedly. Units fight with partial awareness of what is happening around them. Coordination depends increasingly on initiative at small unit level. Decisions made by sergeants and lieutenants shape the course of the battle more than orders from above. Despite everything, the American advance continues. Firepower, numbers, and logistics steadily erode the defense. Fresh units rotate forward. Supplies arrive consistently. Wounded are evacuated. Losses are replaced. The imbalance that Kuribayashi understands so well begins to assert itself inexorably. By early March, it is clear that the outcome is no longer in doubt. What remains uncertain is how long the resistance can continue, and how much more it will cost to extinguish it completely. The battle has not reached a moment of collapse. Instead, it approaches a point where endurance alone determines the pace of events. The northern defenses are still fighting, but the system is beginning to crack. And as those cracks widen, Operation Detachment moves closer to its final, irreversible phase. By mid-March 1945, the battle for Iwo Jima enters its final phase, not with momentum, but with attrition pressing down on both sides. The northern defenses, once cohesive, now operate as fragmented strongholds. Kuribayashi's command structure still exists, but its reach is shrinking. Tunnel networks are partially collapsed. Ammunition is rationed to the last magazines. Messages take longer to reach their destinations, if they arrive at all. Yet resistance does not end. It contracts inward. American forces sense the change. There is no dramatic breakthrough, but the tempo shifts. Positions that once required days to reduce now fall in hours. Fire from the flanks becomes less coordinated. Counterfire loses timing. The defenders are still lethal, but they are no longer synchronized. The system designed to delay indefinitely is running out of space to function. The fighting remains intimate and brutal. Marines continue clearing caves one by one. Some are empty. Some contain wounded defenders. Some erupt in sudden violence when approached. Flamethrowers and demolition charges are used relentlessly, not as instruments of shock, but as tools of necessity. Each engagement is resolved at close range, often within arm's length, with no room for hesitation. Kuribayashi refuses to order surrender. He has long abandoned any expectation of survival. His final communications emphasize duty, endurance, and the obligation to continue resistance as long as possible. Even as his forces are reduced to isolated groups, the doctrine holds. Fight where you are. Delay the enemy. Die only when you can no longer contribute. As American units push deeper into the northern plateau, they encounter fewer large defensive complexes and more scattered pockets of resistance. These final positions are no less dangerous, but they lack the mutual support that defined earlier phases. Individual soldiers fight on from collapsed bunkers, from shallow pits, from sections of tunnel sealed behind them. Some launch surprise attacks at night. Others wait silently until discovered. The battle becomes quieter without becoming safer. Gunfire is sporadic rather than constant. Explosions punctuate long stretches of tense silence. The absence of noise creates its own strain. Every shadow becomes suspect. Every opening might conceal a final defender prepared to fight to the end. By the third week of March, organized Japanese resistance has effectively ceased. What remains is mopping up operations, conducted carefully and methodically. American units sweep sectors repeatedly, checking ground already taken, sealing tunnels, and responding to sporadic fire. There is no surrender ceremony, no formal acknowledgement of defeat. On 26th of March 1945, Iwo Jima is declared secured. The declaration does not end the danger immediately. Isolated defenders continue to emerge and fight in the days and weeks that follow. Some unaware the battle is over, others unwilling to accept it. But as an organized campaign, Operation Detachment has reached its conclusion. The cost is undeniable. The island has been taken, but it has extracted exactly what Kuribayashi intended. Time, lives, psychological weight far beyond its size. Nearly every Japanese defender is dead. American casualties are among the highest of any battle in Marine Corps history. There is no sense of triumph, only exhaustion, relief, and the growing realization that this small island has revealed something profound about the future of the war. Iwo Jima has been secured, but what it has shown about the battles still ahead will not be ignored. The immediate aftermath of Operation Detachment settles over Iwo Jima slowly, like ash after an eruption. The fighting has ended, but the island does not feel conquered. It feels exhausted. The terrain is scarred beyond recognition. Hills that once defined the landscape have been blasted apart. Airfields are cratered. Tunnels collapse days after the last shots are fired, sealing spaces where men lived and died unseen. The smell of sulfur mixes with smoke, decay, and fuel, creating an atmosphere that lingers long after the guns fall silent. Casualty reports confirm what everyone already senses. For the United States, the cost is staggering. Nearly 7,000 Americans are dead. More than 20,000 are wounded. Entire units have been reduced to fractions of their original strength. Medics, engineers, infantry, and support troops have all paid heavily. No previous Marine Corps battle has inflicted losses on this scale. For Japan, the outcome is annihilation. Of the more than 20,000 defenders, only a handful survived to be captured. Kuribayashi's strategy has been executed almost to its absolute limit. The garrison does not surrender, it disappears. The island has been defended exactly as planned, and the defenders are almost entirely gone. Yet the airfields begin to matter immediately. Within days, engineers repair runways under constant pressure. Aircraft start arriving. Fighters land, refuel, and launch again. Damaged bombers limp in from raids over Japan. Crews alive who would otherwise have been lost at sea. Each landing validates one of the central arguments for taking the island. The numbers accumulate quietly. Hundreds of emergency landings follow in the months ahead. Escort fighters extend their reach. Bomber losses begin to decline. These gains do not erase the cost of Iwo Jima, but they demonstrate its utility in cold, measurable terms. Among American leadership, reaction is mixed. There is professional recognition of the achievement. There is respect for the men who fought. But there is also unease. The question begins to circulate, sometimes openly, sometimes privately. If this is the cost of a small, isolated island with no civilians, what will the cost be when the war reaches populated Japanese territory? That question does not yet have an answer, but Iwo Jima has ensured it will not be ignored. The broader consequences of Operation Detachment unfold far beyond the volcanic rock of Iwo Jima. Strategically, the island delivers exactly what American planners hoped for, but not without forcing a deeper reckoning. Iwo Jima becomes a functioning forward base in the air war against Japan. Fighter escorts now accompany bombers deeper into Japanese airspace. Emergency landings save thousands of aircrew lives over the following months. The operational logic behind the invasion proves sound, but the human cost reshapes how that logic is viewed. Senior commanders study the casualty figures alongside the tactical outcomes. Iwo Jima was not a sprawling battlefield. It was not heavily populated. It offered no room for maneuver. Yet it demanded losses comparable to much larger campaigns. The implication is unavoidable. If such a price was required here, the price elsewhere would be far greater. This realization ripples outward. As planning intensifies for the next stages of the Pacific War, Iwo Jima becomes a reference point, not as a failure, but as a warning. It demonstrates what happens when a defender abandons hope of victory and commits fully to attrition. It shows how underground defenses, discipline, and patience can neutralize overwhelming firepower for weeks at a time. For Japan, the battle confirms a grim belief. Kuribayashi's strategy achieved its immediate aim. It inflicted heavy casualties and delayed American momentum, but it did not alter the trajectory of the war. The island was lost. The defenders were destroyed. The American advance continued, now with even greater reach and experience. The lesson is double-edged. Attritional defense can hurt the enemy. It can slow him. But it cannot reverse the imbalance of resources, manpower, and production. The Japanese command gains proof that future battles fought this way will end the same way, only with greater devastation. For the men who fought on Iwo Jima, the aftermath is personal. Veterans carry memories of constant pressure, invisible enemies, and the relentless grind of cave-to-cave fighting. The iconic images that emerge later cannot fully capture what the battle felt like on the ground. The silence, the waiting, the exhaustion, the sense that the island demanded everything before giving anything back. Iwo Jima does not fade quickly from institutional memory. It becomes a benchmark against which future operations are measured. A case study in what attrition warfare truly costs. A reminder that victory can be achieved, but not without consequences that extend far beyond the battlefield. And as attention shifts toward even larger and more complex objectives, one truth remains fixed. If a tiny island like Iwo Jima could demand so much, then the final battles of the Pacific War would demand more than anyone wanted to imagine. Operation Detachment endures not because of what it achieved, but because of what it revealed. Iwo Jima stripped the Pacific War of illusion. It proved that even the smallest piece of ground, when defended with patience, preparation, and acceptance of death, could exact a cost far beyond its size. The island did not fall quickly. It did not fall cleanly. It fell only after every assumption about speed, firepower, and inevitability was tested and found incomplete. For the United States, Iwo Jima was a paradox. The operation succeeded. The airfields mattered. Lives were saved in the skies over Japan. The strategic logic held. And yet, the victory carried a weight that could not be celebrated lightly. The Marines who fought there understood something that maps and reports could not fully convey. The island had demanded endurance rather than brilliance, suffering rather than maneuver, persistence rather than decisive action. For Japanese command, Iwo Jima confirmed a harsh truth. Attritional defense could hurt the enemy. It could delay him. It could impose fear and calculation. But it could not change the final balance. Kuribayashi's doctrine worked exactly as designed, and still the island was lost. The defenders vanished into the ground they had hollowed out, leaving behind proof of sacrifice without salvation. In that sense, Iwo Jima became a mirror. It reflected the future of the war back onto those who studied it. If this was the cost of a small, uninhabited island, then battles fought closer to Japan, among civilians, across larger terrain, would be exponentially worse. The island did not answer questions about how the war would end. It narrowed the options for ending it. History often remembers Iwo Jima through a single image, but the battle itself resists simplification. It was not a moment. It was a process. A slow collision between overwhelming force and deliberate resistance, measured not in breakthroughs, but in days survived and lives spent. That is why Japanese command treated this tiny island as strategically critical. Not because it could change the war's outcome, but because it could show, with terrible clarity, what the war would demand before it was allowed to end.